Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I wanted to do a new kind of top 10 list. It's not one that we focus on very often, but I wanted to highlight the top 10 characters that don't have uniforms yet. And so this is basically, additionally, can be seen as a top 10 best characters without uniforms. However, there are quite a few stipulations, because if we're just talking about top 10 best non-uniform characters, then you may as well include the native tier 2s, and if you are, then you've got characters like Doctor Doom, you've got characters like Gambit and Psylocke, you've got paywall characters. I mean, even Luna Snow tier 3 is quite powerful without a uniform, so it doesn't really help the situation, because if you have the resources and the time to grind up Luna Snow to tier 3, you should spend the crystals to get her uniform. It's just pretty straightforward. So for these characters, because they don't have uniforms yet, you can consider their value a little bit more, a little bit higher than other characters that don't have uniforms or have kind of mid-level uniforms or weak uniforms. In addition, I've included suggestions or theoretical possible uniforms that these characters could get. I tried to include pretty much every single character on this list, except for one, is guaranteed to get a uniform at some point in the future. So their value will increase, which means that it's better to invest in them now rather than having to play catch up later. So before we start, I wanted to give an honorable mention to 3 different characters who just didn't make the list. The first one is Kate Bishop, and she's super easy to farm because of Villain Siege, and she may be getting a uniform because she does appear in Avengers Endgame. Now, we don't know exactly who's playing her or how much of a role the character has, if they're just kind of a civilian at that point, or if they start to show off some of their powers. But that is a character that eventually will get a uniform, and they have, you know, quite a lot of comic book interactions and dedicated pages to warrant an actual uniform. The second one that is also an honorable mention is Mysterio, and we've talked about why you need to tier 2 him. Spider-Man Far From Home, pretty straightforward. The last one is America Chavez, and she was very overshadowed by the other characters that came along in her update, the Ultimates. You all remember that? But yeah, she was in the game. She's been in the game for over a year now. You probably don't remember her, but she has a bunch of different looks, most notably the one on the cover, her own cover, where she's got that American kind of top hat a la Abraham Lincoln, I guess. So she's got a bunch of different looks, and she honestly deserves a bump in power that a uniform could give her, because she's quite weak compared to her comic book. I mean, her comic book counterpart can literally time travel, so she definitely deserves more. But now we're jumping into the actual top 10 list. These characters don't have uniforms yet. They will be getting uniforms eventually, and they are decent to great characters. I didn't want to just pick on characters that don't have uniforms. I'm also looking for the best of the best. So starting us off at number 10, we've got Domino. And Domino was announced for the Deadpool update, and we thought we may be getting a uniform for her, the kind of Zazie Beetz, I believe her name is, uniform for the movie, but we didn't. But the good thing about Domino is she has tons of different looks. A lot of them kind of riff on the X-Force one that you're looking at now. They're pretty straightforward, and they're kind of similar to the tight bodysuit that she has, but she has different looks with headgear, different colors, and color schemes. So she could definitely get a uniform pretty easily, I think, and definitely deserves one, because the character is kind of weak, possibly the weakest character on this list, given her investment, but she can go to level 70 gear 25, so she does have more potential than some characters on this list. Number 9 is one that I've also mentioned quite a few times for different videos, Titania. Now, Titania is a great combat villain superhero, or sorry, combat villain female who also has a great leadership, not a superhero, and she has a couple of different looks from the comics that could definitely outfit a new uniform for her, most notably Fear itself, which I've mentioned about half a dozen times, but she has other looks as well in case that one never comes to reality, although it really should. But even as a standalone character, if you build her up, Titania is good, and you don't have to invest crystals to make her better. At number 8 is another one you've probably recognized, and she should be getting level 70, gear 25 for Endgame, and that's Mantis. We don't know how she's going to recover from the snap. I'm pretty sure she was snapped. I don't remember exactly. I think her and Drax were both snapped, along with Star-Lord and pretty much everyone else on Titan except for Tony and Nebula. Anyways, she has a lot of different comic looks, so they can definitely pick on one of those. They just need to make sure that it's kind of PG-13 area, but she could definitely get a bump, and although I really do like her MCU look, I would like to see her get some more potential and get some more power, because having her stuck at level 60 when a lot of the other Guardians are level 70, or they will be soon with Drax and Gamora, I don't want her to get left behind. And she's still a decent character if you build her up. She can self-heal, she's got good damage, great crowd control with the fear, so solid for Shadowland, possibly noob friendly for timeline battle if you're fighting non-debuff teams, so think about it. At number 7, we've got our resident kind of gateholder, Heimdall. And Heimdall's comic look is very different from his regular look, but he's a strong character nonetheless. He's got a lot of different passive effects that make him very versatile, so you can either build Heimdall very offensively or very defensively. I think he benefits more from a defensive setup if you want to go for timeline, or if you want to go for something like Alliance Conquest, but he can still do some work with self buffs and different buffs in offensive areas, and a uniform would just accentuate that even more, and it would allow him to get to level 70, gear 25, etc. They could also give him the Contest of Champions look, which is also the MCU look, where he's got the gold armor. I personally really like that one, and I would like to see that as kind of like a classic uniform, a la the ones that we have for Hawkeye, Loki, and Hyperion. I think it would look really good in that cell shading for Heimdall specifically. Moving on to number 6, this is one of the first 2 characters you're going to see on this list, and it's Thing. Decent character on his own, very good support character, but he has so many looks, and he's bound to get an upgrade at some point, so building him up is not a bad idea at all. He doesn't have a lot of uses in the game, but he will be able to support, you know, Reed, Johnny, and Sue, and make them a lot stronger, and you do want to use them in different game modes, so it makes sense to build up Ben Grimm. But I mean, you got Future Foundation, you've got when he joined the Guardians of the Galaxy briefly. He's got tons of different comic looks. It would be cool, and I imagine that the Fantastic Four will all get uniforms together at some point, but if they did one-offs, I think Thing would probably, hopefully, be the first in line for that, because right now he's the weakest one, but he has so much potential with his base kit. Moving on to the top 5, we're starting off with a villain, Ulysses Klaw. Now, Ulysses Klaw is a good villain to start you off. He's going to get you 100k in ABX right away as a blast villain. He's easy to play, he's got low cooldown, he self-buffs with the crit damage that you can apply to teammates, so it's easy to cap some of those more difficult stats without using CTPs, and you can just use a regular obelisk, and he does good damage, easy to play, you know, clones, iframes. On top of that, he looks so different than his comic look, than his classic kind of, you know, story look, that they could really go anywhere with it. I think he looks super goofy with that, like, megaphone on his arm, but I would be delighted as well if he got kind of a cell shading, and maybe it would bump him up to a more dangerous, more powerful blast villain that could compete with the likes of some of our, you know, current meta blast villains, or maybe not competing with Strife and Tier 3 Magneto, but at least, you know, a bit closer to striking range of those characters, to give us a bit more diversity in that subclass of blast characters. Moving on to number 4, unlike Domino, Phantom X is a lot better as a base character. He's got self-healing, he's got super armor, he's got iframes, he's got all defense down on his 5th skill. He's very, very good. And he's kind of like a poor man's, you know, a mix between a poor man's Wolverine and a poor man's Deadpool. He's quite good. He's got a couple of different looks in the comics. They don't vary too much from this one, but a lot of them end up being all white with a little bit of pink trim, or just straight up all white. A little bit more of a ghost type look, but it's definitely something he could be getting in the future. Obviously not at the same time as Deadpool is getting his coming up, but, you know, when one gets them, the rest, of course, and hopefully should follow. And he's a great character in the meantime to build up just for regular gameplay. Moving on to top 3, this is the only character that I can't foresee a uniform for, but I couldn't leave him off this list of characters that you don't need to invest extra crystals in to be good, because he's just really good. He's very, very new player friendly, but even for veterans, he's solid. You can really crank up his damage with lightning. He's fun to play. He's super fast base speed, so you kind of zip around. And he's kind of like, if you don't want a tier 3 Iron Man, and you don't want to build up Iron Man at all, but you kind of want to play as Iron Man, play as Iron Hammer, to be honest. He's not going to be as good as a fully maxed out Iron Man, but he gets pretty close. and you'll get enough different flavor that it'll feel more fun, I think, than Iron Man, who only has basically 2 fun skills in 3 and 5. The bad thing, or the downside, is that his potential to get a uniform is extremely low. It may never happen, and so just kind of be careful if you're going to be investing a lot into Iron Hammer. Know that this may be as good as it gets for him, but frankly, compared to the other characters on this list, it gets pretty good for Tony Odinson, I think his name was, which is hilarious. On to the top 2. We've got Morgan Le Fay coming in second to first, and she's got a lot of different comic book looks that she could get. She could get a uniform alongside Doctor Doom at one point. The only thing that Netmarble needs to do is make sure that the titties are hidden, because she's got a lot of cleavage showing in pretty much all of the different looks that I could recall from comics, then I could pull up Google images of with the safe search on. But if she gets a uniform, you gotta watch out, and this is why you should build her before that. You don't have to invest the crystals, of course, but she's very, very close to being a powerhouse. She's got the universal female villain tag, which is super premium. She's got the revive, which is crazy premium and usually reserved for super meta characters like Doctor Doom, Jean Grey, Adam Warlock, Dormammu, literally native tier 2s. Corvus. She's got self-healing, she's got summons, she's got a guard hit, she's got mind control, she's got cooldown reset on skills, she's got all defense down with a blast skill that has channeling and movement. Yeah, she's got a full set. These are the kind of dark horse sleeper characters that I always watch and that I always try to keep a pretty decent build on, because the time will come one day when they jump back up to the top meta, and you'll be surprised, and I'll be kind of, you know, busting ass with them in the meantime until you catch up. So we come finally to number 1, and I think after the Ben Grimm hint, you can guess who I'm talking about. And yes, of course, one more time, Human Torch, an amazing character. Honestly, he is very, very, very good for being not only easy to farm, but not having a uniform. And like Ben, he's got a lot of different looks that you could give him from the comics. A very easy one, kind of mask off or hood down, is to just take away the fire from his face, which is usually how he looks kind of pre-battle in some instances. They could also just take away all of the flame on the inside of his body and just have kind of an aura around him, so you can get that nice blue color, and it's probably underneath there if you hide the textures of the flames anyways, so that would be an easy way for them to kind of bank an easy sale for a crystal uniform. He also has some alternate looks where he himself looks different as well, like 2099, so they could also do something like that. Very wide variety of choices, but even if he never gets a uniform, Human Torch is still going to be better than like half the characters in the game. Healing, all defense down, immunity, channeling skill, he's got dodge, immunity to fire, wild self-healing, insane self-healing. He's got it all, basically. And I mean, yeah, it's only going to go up from there if he gets a uniform. So that is the list of characters, and I don't usually highlight this. I usually assume, for all intents and purposes, that you're going to purchase every single uniform. So I wanted to, for once, take a look at things from the point of view of not having a uniform. So in this case, a character like Minerva doesn't even make this list, which is quite a shocker, but it's because, in fact, without her uniform, she does drop down quite a bit, and if you don't have the crystals to invest, and you're not necessarily looking for a character of that magnitude, you may want to think about building up another one in the meantime who could end up leapfrogging Minerva when they eventually get their uniform. Not saying that Titania is a better character to build up instead of Minerva in the long term. For the moment, of course, Minerva has much more potential, but if you don't have the crystals and you know you're not going to have them, then you may want to make a different decision depending on which one of the top 5 or so you don't have. And then, you know, from there you can save your crystals, especially if you are saving for some of the very powerful non-uniformed characters like Invisible Woman or Psylocke, who don't have uniforms yet but cost, you know, thousands of crystals to obtain. So of course that's why I didn't mention them, but also it's an interesting perspective that I don't usually take. So let me know what you think of my list. Let me know what you would change, if anything at all. Subscribe if you enjoy the content, and of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.